Welcome back to another episode of Late Hits. I'm your host, Reed Napper. Thank you for joining us today. Our guest today, the esteemed, the one and only AT of Tampa 2 College Football on Twitter. How are you, my friend?
Man, I'm happy to be here. Can't believe I'm a esteemed guest here. What an honor. I mean, this is one of the most honorable things Tampa 2's done so far as a Twitter page. So I'm loving it.
All of AT's links are going to be down in the description below, so make sure to go check them out. Give him a follow on Twitter. He's a great follow. And of course, anyone that follows up Colton is going to be a better guest. So our topics today: national contenders and potential sleepers heading into the spring practice window. The NCAA versus the players, a common theme seen nowadays. And our top 5 Big Ten teams heading into the pre-spring practice window. Our first topic today: national contender and potential sleepers in the spring window. Now, AT, I will let you set the table here. As the guest of the program, who is a program that you're keeping an eye out on heading into the spring?
I'll just go straight into the contender here. I mean, I've got just a clear cut. I mean, as I started looking into this and thinking about this question, I mean, yeah, we could talk about Texas. We could talk about the guys that all the analysts are going to talk about. But I can't get over Miami right now. I am just stuck on them. Not only because we just got done watching them playing a national championship, but I think Mario Cristobal has done a really good job. We know he's got a defensive mind, but, you know, he got there with Carson Beck. And no slight to him, I just have always thought Carson Beck's a game manager, not just the greatest quarterback ever. And I'm a Darian Mensah hater, the way that he left Duke, but the guy can ball. And he will ball, and he can do things on it with his feet. He can throw a deep ball. I mean, he's good. He's really good. And so I think they've leveled up at quarterback just to start there. And then when you've got somebody who I think is, you know, and this is going to get a lot of slack from some Ohio State fans, I think the best wide receiver in the country is Malachi Toney. The kid was 17 going into last season. Mm-hmm. And it's been a long, long time since I have turned on a game and watched a wide receiver take the game over and put the team on his back. And he did it time and time again. I mean, if it was not for him, they don't win that game against OM. I know everyone remembers the play at the end of the game where Carson Beck runs it in. But if you go back and watch the first half of that game, Carson Beck was missing the deep ball. Malachi Toney was torching their cornerbacks all night. And so what they did in the second half was they said, hey, we're not hitting that. Let's start throwing it to him out here over the side. Let's throw some screens to him. And he just started turning upfield and he literally put the team on his back. And I don't remember a time that I've seen, you know, unless we're talking about Julio Jones or like Devontae Wilson or, from Alabama back in the day. It's been a long time since I've seen a wide receiver do that. And yeah, I put him in a high regard. I think he's one of my favorite, most explosive players that I've watched in a while. And, I know they're going to lose some key defensive pieces, you know, in like the Reuben Baines and those guys, but I think Cristobal is going to do a great job of bringing in who he wants. And I don't think defense is ever going to be a problem for him. So I'm just super, super high on Miami. I think they're leveling up at quarterback, like I said. And as long as you got Malachi Toney and guys in the backfield that can make plays like that, I can't see them not being a contender to win a national championship next year. So
yeah, and it's crazy you bring him up because he was only a true freshman last year,
right,
which is absolutely insane. And they use him in such a multitude of ways, you know, in the backfield, motions, stuff like that, screens. He's a true gadget player. So I like that shout. My personal contender to watch for the spring is Oregon. I think they returned so much production that aside from Texas, who arguably has the best roster heading into the spring, Oregon is right up there. They returned Dante Moore, Evan Stewart, DeCorian Moore, Jordan Davison, and that's all on the offensive side. Bear Alexander, Amari Washington, Uwe Ogulale, if I'm pronouncing that right, and Tatum Tuioti. They returned their entire starting defensive line, not to mention one of the best cornerbacks in the country, and Brandon Finney Jr. Alongside a stacked recruiting class. I believe they were second and third in the national recruiting rankings, according to 247 Sports. But I think their portal additions were also not underwhelming, but underrated. Aside from Coy Parrish, who obviously takes the headlines as a top two-way player from Minnesota, Dylan Raiola is going to sit a year. So even if this year doesn't go to plan for Oregon, they have Dylan Raiola to back him up next year when Dante Moore eventually does go to the NFL. But I think some more underrated portal acquisitions that they did made. DeAndre Robinson from North Carolina, defensive lineman, is a good, backup option for Bear Alexander and Amari Washington. Can spell them at times, Aaron Scott Jr., a defensive back they added from within conference at Ohio State, I think is another underrated one. And Iverson Hooks from UAB, a receiver that, I mean, obviously gets overlooked because he played in the American at UAB. They weren't the best of teams last year in the American Conference. I think taking a step up and playing for Oregon, he's able to, fill in the shoes of some of the receivers that they're losing, to the draft this year. So I think Oregon's definitely my team to watch. The only caveat I have against them right now is that they are replacing both coordinators. Tosh Lupoi and Will Stein are both heading out the door to their own respective head coaching positions. So I'm curious to see how those new coordinators fit in. They both get promoted from within. Drew Maringer was the tight ends coach last year. He gets promoted to offensive coordinator, and Chris Hampton was a co-defensive coordinator last year and now taking on the full-time role. So aside from that and replacing a lot of their production on the offensive line, they have to replace 3 starters on the offensive line. Those are my 2 biggest questions when it comes to Oregon. Another one that I could see people propose is potentially replacing the production of Kenyon Sadiq. They do bring in Andrew Olish, who was a former 4-star prospect from Penn State, and Jamari Johnson is still there on that roster at tight end. So those are the biggest questions for Oregon right now, but I think they're solely slept on because of the production that they do return. I don't think it's getting enough credit nationally, at least.
And not to get to or to spoil, one of my top 5 Big Ten teams getting into that segment, but I mean, I'm right there with you. And also I was looking at their recruiting, they've done a great job with portal additions. They keep Dante Moore around, which is huge, obviously. If he gets injured, they go to Raiola right there. I think that was just a crazy. I was not expecting that. It was a crazy move, but I think it was the right move for Raiola in his career, and it's good for Oregon to have him. I think you mentioned Aaron Scott Jr. coming in from Ohio State there. He's a fantastic cornerback. But they also signed the number 1 overall safety in the country in Jet Washington out of high school. And then they signed a top 5 player in Anthony Jones on the edge. So they are just doing everything they can to level up their defense. And these are guys that are talented enough, even on a stacked Oregon roster, that they can start day 1 out of high school. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of their high school guys come in and go crazy as well. And one of those offensive linemen they grab, I think is the number 2 player in the entire high school recruiting or whatever, just, according to 247, Emmanuel Ihan Ocho. I know I'm butchering his name, but he's a dog and he's big. And I think that's a guy that we'll see. Honestly, on the offensive line, I think we'll see him day 1. He's one of those guys that I think will play for 3 years and go be a top 5 draft pick.
So moving to the other side of the spectrum now, let's look at some potential sleepers that teams are, not talking about highly throughout the country, but us college football sickos have noticed. AT, who's the first one up on your list?
First for me, I'm looking at UCLA pretty hard right now. Obviously had a rough season last year. They had high expectations, had a good transfer portal going into 2025, just did not perform well. Started off, I think, 0-4, didn't really find any life till the Penn State game, sorry. But, that's kind of when it all started for them. That's also when everything kind of fell apart for James Franklin and the Nittany Lions up there. But I think I believe in Bob Chesney. I think he's a good coach. I have a lot of faith in him just from a mentality standpoint, not talking about recruiting, not talking about the squad they have. Obviously they're returning their starting quarterback and Nico Iamaleava, and he's good. I think he had a lot of weird things happen at the end of his tenure at Tennessee. But just listening to Bob Chesney talk, I have not been able to consume enough of the content of listening to him talk to his team. I think he's got their heads on straight. And it's so hard to do that when you're a new coach. It's really hard to do that when you're a team like UCLA that had such high expectations and then they just kind of, failed for lack of a better term there. So I'm really high on them. They did do a really good job of bringing in a good portal class as well. A lot of guys that I think were overlooked. They had Malik Hartford coming from Ohio State. He was listed as a 3-star. They had Sammy Omosigiogo coming from Oklahoma. He's a dog linebacker. He's going to be somebody that comes in and makes an impact day 1. And then they just upgraded on the defensive line as much as they could. They added several edges, several defensive tackles. Guys like Darren DiNoho coming from Rutgers, who was kind of somebody that I watched last season because I remember he was really touted in the portal as somebody that came out of a smaller school, but he's going to find his way day 1 on UCLA's roster. So if they can keep those guys healthy, they keep their quarterback. I think that, obviously, like I said, I really, really trust in Bob Chesney. I think he's going to do a fantastic job. And I'm interested to see what their season looks like. I'm not saying they're going to win more than 10 games. I don't think they're necessarily going to be competing for a Big Ten, but I do see them winning at least 8 to 10 games next season and a big upgrade going into the year for them. So
the first team under the radar for me personally, I think, is SMU. I think Rhett Lashley and the Mustangs are right on the cusp of getting back to the college football playoff. Personally, they retained Kevin Jennings at quarterback, which is huge. Quarterback continuity is huge nowadays in college football. Ymir Knight, who is one of the unsung heroes of this SMU offense last season, he's retained at wide receiver, and also on the offensive line, Joshua Bates at center. Center is arguably the most important position on the offensive line, so retaining your center is also a huge plus. Ja'Kai Lang at defensive end. They bring back their top 3 linebackers on defense and their top corner, Tyron Poley, who forced multiple turnovers last season. But I think some of their portal additions are some of the most slept on in the entire country. They bring in Yannick Smith, who is from East Carolina last year at receiver. He had 583 yards at wide receiver with an average depth of target at 10.8 yards. So, I mean, if he's averaging a first down every time he catches the ball, or at least targeted, like that obviously is a huge plus inserted in the offense. They also had 2 tight ends, Theo Mellon-Orstrom from Texas A&M and Randy Pittman Jr. from Florida State. They also had Kendrick Raphael from Cal at running back. Now, Cal's, I don't know what the problem is with Cal. At least they're now going into a new era with Tosh Woodploy, but they could not hang on to productive running backs. Now they lost a near 1,000-yard rusher again from the 2025 season in Kendrick Raphael. He is added to this SMU offense, along with Malcolm Alcorn Crowder, defensive tackle from Kansas State. I think it's just good to add P4 experience on the defensive line. And Ira Singleton, an edge from South Florida, recorded 4 sacks last season. So I think some of their portal additions are underrated, especially in the ACC, which aside from Miami is pretty much wide open at this point. I mean,
yeah, I love them. I think SMU being good is good for college football. Obviously, whenever you think of the death penalty, that's the first thing you think of because of the way they got hit and the way that the rule was completely changed because of how bad it did them. I mean, it put their program under, but they're back. I mean, they're back in the spotlight. I think it's good for the sport. I think it's good for the ACC, obviously. I love them being good. I love Brett Lashley. I'm all over him. Kevin Jennings, fantastic quarterback. I mean, that's keeping him was just such a key piece for them. And I think he's going to produce really well for them next season. So I'm very high on SMU. They're one of my favorites to win the ACC, honestly, besides Miami, because yet again, I couldn't be higher on Miami right now. So
AT, what is the last team you have on your list as we look out for these spring practices?
I'm going to mention 2 teams here.
Okay.
One I'm going to briefly talk about because they've been a powerhouse and we just haven't seen it lately. Florida. I love John Summerall. Yeah. I think he's going to have them in such a good spot. We were talking about it before. I couldn't remember who the dadgum quarterback was, Philo, that transferred. I knew they had a stud in him. But, I mean, Eric Singleton Jr. as well coming in is going to be such a huge addition for them. Mm-hmm. They also brought in running back, I'm drawing a blank right now, out of ECU, London Montgomery. He's a stud. I think he'll have some impact for him. I'm excited to see what Summerall can do down there. I'm really high on him as a coach, more than just what their recruiting class is showing. Yet again, I'm not thinking this is an SEC champion. I'm not thinking they're even going to make a playoff run, but I'd love to see him win 8 to 9 games and be in the competition at the end of the season. Sure. But who I'm really hype on and I'm extremely excited about is Oklahoma State. I think, I mean, and I don't even know if this is a sleeper because everybody's been talking about him so much in this transfer portal. It's tough to even say that they're going to be a Big 12 contender because I think if you take North Texas and put them in the Big 12, I'm not saying that, last year's North Texas team would win the Big 12, and that's what we've done here. But these guys have played together. They've been together. You bring in Mestamaker, I think is one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. Caleb Hawkins, who's one of the best running backs in the league. Offensively, they're going to be unbelievable. There's going to be some questions defensively, just like it was at North Texas. But I think that that's a team to watch. And Eric Morris is a great head coach. I'm thinking that this is a team that could I will say it, I think they could compete for a Big 12 right behind like a BYU and a Texas Tech right now. So really, really hype on Oklahoma State. They killed it in the portal. Did a fantastic job bringing in guys, even though a lot of them did come from one program.
The final team that I had on my list was the Louisville Cardinals. Now, Louisville, Jeff Brom, again, another coach I think doesn't get enough recognition nationally. Aside from Brett Lashley at SMU, Jeff Brom is one of the most slept on coaches in the country. And they're returning they're returning one of the best running back duos in the country from last season, Isaac Brown and K'Wan Brown. They're not related. Their portal additions, I think, don't get enough recognition. Again, they bring on Trey Richardson from Vanderbilt, who had over 800 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. Brody Foley, who is a tight end from Tulsa. Now you're probably thinking, a tight end from Tulsa. What, like, there's no way he was that outstanding. Over 500 yards as a tight end with 7 touchdowns. Like, that's an underrated addition. I think this is a huge year for Louisville, and I think the schedule also stacks up for them well in the fall. I know they have a tough opener against OM in Nashville. Maybe might just be there in person. We'll see about that. But I think Louisville is definitely a team to watch this year, especially with going through quarterback transition. I think bringing in Lincoln Kienholz from Ohio State is going to pay dividends for them. Wasn't the biggest fan of Miller Moss last year. I think Lincoln Kienholz is going to be a step up for Miller Moss. Miller Moss was very sporadic at times with turnovers and the sort. So next on the docket, we have a common theme seen around college football nowadays: the NCAA versus players. It's taken the world by storm. Players now suing for more eligibility. We're talking about NIL deals, contracts being broken. AT's been right in the thick of it down there in Mississippi. Right in the middle of Trinidad Chambliss's dilemma with Ole Miss, now getting his injunction approved and coming back for the Rebels. So, AT, I'm going to get your thoughts first. What are we doing in college football nowadays? I never thought breaking news was going to be about lawyers, contracts being broken, anything of the sort.
The problem is that we don't know what we're doing, but the NCAA doesn't know what they're doing either. So nobody can answer the question. And then you see it's like we finally get something where the NCAA is going to crack down. And what do they crack down on? Putting your shorts past your kneecap. It's like, okay, so you guys can make rules then, It's just ridiculous. It's just like, where is the line in the sand? And where are we? There is no line in the sand. It's just the Wild West out here. And it's kind of ridiculous. The Trinidad Chambliss thing, look, I love it for the kid. Obviously, I hate it as a Mississippi State fan. I love it for the kid, though, because I'd want to play as much college football as possible. The problem is that you got Joey Aguilar trying to do the exact same thing in Tennessee, doesn't get approved. You've got kids at Alabama, Kendrick Bingley Jones, their defensive tackle, going into his 7th year. He gets approved. It's just there's no Diego Pavia is the same class as Chambliss, doesn't get approved at Vandy. So it's just the inconsistency that's the biggest problem. And to the NCAA's credit, which I don't give them much credit, they are trying to put some type of law or some type of regulation in place. And they have made comments straight up saying, we don't have a handle on this thing with the way that it's at the government level, the state, local government level, which is ridiculous when it comes to college sports. So yet again, I've probably said it 100 times, but the regulating body of college athletics cannot regulate college athletics, which makes zero sense.
Yeah, the Washington situation was going to be the one that I stood out in my mind because Damon Williams literally signed a contract 4 days before he tried to enter the portal with Washington. And then they were like, we're suing you for breach of contract. Since when does a school sue a player for a breach of contract? I'm like, this isn't the NFL. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And the thing that is so wild about it is, if you didn't want to be there, like even a remote thought that you didn't want to be at the school that you're currently at, then go in the portal, but don't sign a contract literally binding to a university if you have any remote thought of wanting to leave that program. That whole situation with Dabo literally calling out Ole Miss for tampering is unbelievable and should happen more, honestly.
It should. The problem is
there has to be more accountability. There has to be more accountability.
No doubt. And the problem with that particular situation is Dabo brings the receipts. They've signed the contract. Nothing happened. Literally nothing happened. The guy went and had a press conference the next day after, again, I can't remember the kid's name, that committed to, he's at Ole Miss now, committed there, playing. He's going to be on their roster next season. Dabo he was in class when he gets the text message with the contract. Nothing happens. And obviously I'm going to hate on Ole Miss as a State fan, but it's not just their problem. It's all across the board right now. I literally watched a video yesterday and I can't remember what coach it was, but he refused to talk about his players because he was worried that if he said good things about them,
the BYU coach,
BYU, thank you.
coach.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, that is sad. That is a sad state of affairs when you can't even say, yeah, so-and-so is doing good in practice right now because you're worried he's going to be gone before the spring. We're not even – it's ridiculous. And yet again, there's just no regulations. There's no guidelines. And I cannot blame Pete Golding or any coach for taking advantage of a system that allows you to take advantage of it.
Oh, yeah.
As much as I hate it, as from a fan perspective, as much as I hate it from somebody who loves the sport so much, I can't take it. I can't hate you for trying to win because that's what their jobs are on the line. And if tampering is allowed, why not tamper? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. A report a few weeks ago from Pete Nakos, and he was talking about, like, I forget what the term he called it was. It was like ghost transfers or something, players basically just getting up and leaving in the middle of spring practice, and they'll be at a new school by the next day. Like that could happen to numerous programs. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like they could be at a team meeting. He's like, I don't want to be here anymore. It's like he just gets out. Like what are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing? And the thing about the Pete Golding situation to me is it wasn't like he went through agents or anything like that. He was talking to the player directly. Like a lot of times I think they're getting around it because they're talking to agents and there's a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff. He talked to him directly, and still the NCAA said, oh, it's okay, man. You're good. You just do what you want, just insanity. And something's got to change. Something's got to break.
Okay. On a lighter note, we are going to finish off the show today with our top 5 Big Ten teams heading into the spring. I'm going to start AT, and I feel like this might be a consensus pick, but I have Indiana as my number 1 team going into the spring. Defending Big Ten champions, defending national champions. Never thought I would ever say that about the Indiana Hoosiers. But Curt Cignetti has his team rolling. They return a bunch of key players, namely on the offensive line. They return a handful of offensive linemen, namely Carter Smith at left tackle, who won Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. Tyree Tucker on the defensive line, Charlie Becker. Return a handful of players on each side of the ball. But I think their portal additions potentially could be the best that they have seen so far during Cignetti's tenure. Josh Hoover comes in at quarterback, Nick Marsh at receiver for Michigan State, Shaz Preston, an underrated one at receiver from Tulane, Toby Onsensami, an edge from Kansas State. They also re-signed Tino Sincere, which I think is a huge move, re-signing him as the quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator. He was about to head out of there for another job, and they're able to bring him back on the staff. So
no, I agree. I think Josh Hoover's way higher touted than Fernando was, and Fernando's a fantastic quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but Hoover just was tearing it up at TCU. Obasanya, or I'm going to kill his name. I'm not going to try again.
Toby.
Yeah, Toby. What am I doing? T.O. Toby. He's the man. They also had Nick Marsh, wide receiver that's going to be a day one type guy for them. He's going to be somebody that does a really good job. They've just leveled up. They've leveled up so well. I think it's one of the best portal classes that we've seen in Indiana. It's dangerous to think what Curt Cignetti can do with a better team than he had last year. So I'm super excited about them. In my opinion, I agree with the argument of, Kirby Smart is really good. I agree with the argument that, Ryan Day is really good, probably maybe even better coaches because they got a little bit more trophies in their case. But right now, in my mind, Curt Cignetti is the best coach in college football because he did more with less.
And speaking of Ohio State, I have them as my second best team heading into the season, or into the spring at least. I think they're similar to a Notre Dame in my eyes. They're just going to be heading into this next season with their hair on fire. They had a really great regular season, ended up tough loss in the Big Ten championship, get smoked by Miami in the playoff, even though Jeremiah Smith had arguably one of the best days of his entire career so far. But I think somewhere in Notre Dame, they're just going to be playing with their hair on fire. They're pissed off. Again, as I said, Jeremiah Smith comes back, arguably the best player in the country. Julian Sayin, again, back at quarterback. I think that connection was unstoppable last year. So go alongside of Jeremiah Smith. Oh, just number one player in the country, Chris Henry Jr. at wide receiver. Like unbelievable production for Ohio State. They have numerous 5-star prospects coming in. Their portal additions aren't bad. James Smith, a defensive lineman from Alabama, Hunter Welsing, tight end from Northwestern. The notable one to me is Quay Russo from Alabama off the edge. One of the best edge players in the country last year. just, slots right into that Ohio State defense. Obviously, replacing Arvell Reese and his production on the defensive side, I think is going to be huge to get a player of Quay Rousseau's production.
Yeah, the most impressive thing, and I'm right there with you. They're on my number 2 as well. I don't see how anyone can have them differently. The most impressive thing is what they kept: Julian Sagan, Bo Jackson, Jeremiah Smith. I mean, offensively, they're obviously going to be incredibly sound. Julian Sagan is. I'm not just incredibly hype on him. I think he's kind of a manager more than anything. I don't think he takes games over, but it's also maybe because he doesn't have to, because he does have such good wide receivers. It does suck losing Hartline. He was obviously a huge part of that, a big reason. It's what got them there. It's kind of what has made them take over that moniker. But yeah, you mentioned them too. James Smith, Quay Rousseau. I highlighted them, circled them, underlined them, whatever you can do for transfers, because those guys are just absolute animals. And they did need to add some defensive line, some front seven talent. And just having those two guys alone is going to upgrade their front seven from, I think they potentially could have one of the best in the country.
I'm curious to see who you have at 3, so I'm going to let you go first because I feel like we could be aligned once again, potentially.
It sounds like that's the case. I've got Oregon at number 3. I don't know where you're at, but I mean, you mentioned them already, so I'm guessing that's where you're at because you've already got 2 teams ahead of them. So I mean, just what they kept, not to just reiterate everything you've already said, but Dante Moore, Raiola at quarterback. They got Evan Stewart, and they've got Finney Jr. out there. I mean, they're going to be good. Dan Lanning's a fantastic head coach. I mean, what more can I really say about them? They're adding. I want to say, is it Perrick? It's one of the defensive additions that they brought in this year.
Coy Parrish,
Parrish, yeah. He's going to be a stud for them. So they're going to be a good football team. I don't know. I don't know if Dan Lanning can win the playoff game, the big playoff game. So that's going to be the telltale for them. It'll be interesting to see, but yeah, I think they're obviously a competitor for the title this year. So
my 4th team, even though they've fallen off a little bit over the last 2 seasons, I'm gonna go with the Michigan Wolverines. I have Michigan at number 4, and I've said this on Red Zone Live before with Jake. Link will be down in the description. Go subscribe to Jake. I've said this before. Michigan backdooring their way into Kyle Whittingham is absolutely unbelievable. One of the most tenured coaches in the sport, 22 years at Utah, multi-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year, one of the winningest current coaches in the sport. You keep Bryce Underwood at quarterback. Jordan Marshall returns at running back. They do lose Justice Haynes, but according to some Michigan circles, they think Jordan Marshall was the better running back anyway. So that's a plus there. Andrew Marsh returns at receiver. Kendrick Bell also at receiver. Defensive players also returning. So their incoming recruiting class, they get the number 1 back in the class, Savion Hitter. Carter Meadows was a top edge in the class as well. So a couple of day 1 starters potentially for Michigan. And their portal additions, while be it a lot of them come from Utah, a lot of them are proven production coming from Utah. Namely, John Henry Daly at edge coming from Utah was one of the best edges in the country last year, along with Smith Snowden at DB was one of the best defensive backs in the country last year. So
yeah, I mean, I promise I didn't copy your notes here, but that's the exact same team I got. I just don't see how you don't right now. I mean, the Kyle Whittingham hire at the timing of it was, in my opinion, the best hire of the entire coaching carousel. How they were able to do that when they were. Everybody else was gone already. The contracts have been signed. You can't buy these guys out this time. Who's left? Who is left in this world? I'm thinking, man, what is Michigan going to do? They're screwed. And then they get Kyle Whittingham, and it's like, oh wow, they know more than I do about this game, And that was such a good move. Not to just reiterate, I think the only player that you didn't mention was Sleacy Moe coming from Utah, cornerback. He's going to be a stud as well, day 1 type guy. But yeah, JJ Buchanan's obviously going to be he's unbelievable. John Henry Daly's unbelievable. Jamie French from Texas is so good. And then Bryce Underwood, I mean, he's touted as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. We didn't get to see that last year. True freshman. That's normal anyways. But we didn't get to see it because of exactly what you said. He just didn't have the cast around him. I think, and it's a telltale for me that you have these Utah guys leave and go there, and you have the flips as well. These people want to play for Whittingham. There was a lot of guys. I'll give you kind of the ones I got on the fringe here. I really like Washington. I really like Penn State. Shout out your boys over there. Getting Matt Campbell, getting Iowa State guys over there, kind of on the fringe for me, just unknowns with those 2 teams. think Washington's got a good chance to be really good, but I got USC sitting number 5 right now. Just because they return Jaden Miava, they return a lot of production. They return so many. I mean, offensively, we know Lincoln Riley's going to have the boys ready. Their high school recruiting class was unbelievable. They brought in so much talent in the high school side. Now, it's tough to say that these guys are going to. I'm in this day and age, I don't think that the high school recruiting class does as much for you year one. His goal is to let's develop some guys. Let's get these guys in here, keep them around, keep our studs on the team, keep a good starting 11, a good starting 11 on both sides of the ball, and then let's go compete for a title in 2 to 3 years. They easily could win a Big Ten championship this year just with the production they're returning. But I'm kind of under the impression that they're playing for the future, which is why I don't have them as a top 3, top 4 team. But I could not, disregard where they're at right now. I think they've got a really good chance to roll.
You basically said it all for me. The production that they do return, and I think their incoming recruiting class could be a day one impact at all levels on both sides of the ball. The biggest impact player on this team, aside from Miava at quarterback, Zariah Fisher coming in at defensive end from Penn State as potentially the best edge rusher in the portal. And for him to flip to USC when he was rumored to go back to Ohio State because he's from Ohio, for him to flip to USC, I think is a huge plus for them defensively. And he's a young guy. He was only a freshman last year for Penn State. So. Okay, it is time for the final word. Once again, this week we are going to run it back with a trivia question from each of us proposed to each other. So, AT, as a guest, your question today. Can you name me the first 2-time Heisman Trophy winner?
Oh, Lord. First 2 times. I should know this. First 2-time Heisman Trophy winner. I know this is not this guy, but he didn't win it twice, but Johnny Manziel should have won 2 Heismans, in my opinion. Freshman year wins it, sophomore year he gets robbed.
Some would say.
Some would say. I need a hint.
He was on the offensive side of the ball.
Okay. Had to be. Team or something.
He played in the Big Ten.
There's no way I'm going to figure it out. I don't know. When was it? What was the years? Give me
74 and 75.
What's the guy? Oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? I know it now. I saw that. You know what's crazy is I watched Brandon Walker talk about this.
Of course he did.
Because he was trying to go through all the Heisman guys. He thought he was the king of it, and some guy just roasting. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
Answer is Archie Griffin. Running back, Ohio State.
Archie, I remember that, dude. I was thinking it was Archie. I should have known that because I have one that's a little bit more in the modern era here.
Okay.
You might pick this. Like I said, you might pick this out like that. I don't know. Who was the first team ever ranked in the college football number 1? First team ever ranked number 1 in the college football playoff era.
So what was this? 2014.
2014-ish. Yeah.
Shoot, coming from you, I know they were pretty notable at that time. It was Mississippi State.
Yeah, I had to put my
because I knew they were on fire with Dak. Dak was the quarterback then. Yeah.
I didn't know if I was like, man, he might pull this out ASAP. And when you told me a trivia question, I was like, got my trivia question.
AT, any final words before we sign off?
No, I don't have anything, man. This was so much fun. I appreciate you bringing me on. This is a great time. The best thing I'll say is, like you said, great minds think alike because we had the same exact top 5. But also one thing I'll say on that, if you don't have those guys in your top 5, what are you doing right now? Because that's just what the Big Ten's laying out to be. So had a great time, man. Appreciate you bringing me on and excited to do this again sometime with you.
For sure. And everyone, make sure to go follow AT. His links are going to be down in the description. Make sure to go give him a follow on Twitter. He's a great follow. I promise you will find great entertainment and college football knowledge from this man himself. For your host, Renapper, I appreciate it. We will catch you next time. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let us know your top 5 Big Ten teams coming in the spring. Curious to see if anyone differs from us, but who knows nowadays. We'll catch you in the next one.